Hello friends, welcome to Premier UPSC Ias. So let's continue with the modern history revision lectures. So in the past we have discussed till the civil disobedience movement. Now we are going to discuss from Quit India movement to the India Independence Act of 1947. Quit India movement. Individual Satyagraha. After rejecting the August offer, the Congress once again asked Gandhi to take command towards the end of 1940. Gandhi began taking steps towards the preparation of a mass struggle. He initiated a concept of limited satyagraha on an individual basis by a few selected individuals in every locality. The aims of the individual satyagraha were to show the nationalist patience was not due to weakness, express people's feeling that they were not interested in the war and that there were no difference between Nazism and the double autocracy that ruled India. Given another opportunity to the government to accept Congress demands, the Satyagrahi would demand freedom of speech against the war through an anti-war declaration. If the government did not arrest the Satyagrahi, then he or she would repeat it and move it to villages and start a march towards Delhi. This movement, which came to be known as the Delhi Chalo movement, Vinoba Bhave was the first to offer the individual satyagraha. Nehru was second. 25,000 people had been convicted for individual civil disobedience by May 1941. Nehru, the successor of Gandhi. All the arrested Congress leaders were released in December 1941 as Japan was aggressively approaching India. The CWC passed a resolution offering to cooperate with the government in the defense of India if full independence was given after the war and substance of power was transferred immediately. Gandhi designated Nehru as his chosen successor at this time. Following the CWC resolution, the British government sent a mission to India in March 1942, headed by Sir Stafford Cripps, with constitutional proposals to seek Indian support for the war. Stafford Cripps was a left-wing liberal who had actively supported the Indian national movement. Cripps' mission of 1942. In March 1942, Cripps' mission was sent because of the following reasons. The losses suffered by Britain in Southeast Asia, Japanese threat to invade India seemed real now and Indian support became crucial. There was pressure on Britain from allies USA, USSR, China to seek Indian cooperation. Indian nationalists had agreed to support the Allied cause if substantial power was transferred immediately and complete independence given after the war. Proposals of Cripps' mission. An Indian Union with a dominion status would be set up. A constituent assembly, partly elected and partly nominated, would be convened to frame a new constitution after the war. The British government would accept new constitution with the following conditions. Any province not willing to join the union could have a separate constitution and form a separate union. The new constitution making body and the British government would negotiate a treaty to effect the transfer of power and safeguard racial and religious minorities. In the meantime, defense of India would remain in British hands and the Governor General's powers would remain intact. Failure of Cripps' mission. The Cripps mission proposals failed to satisfy Indian nationalists. Different parties and groups had several objections to it. Nehru and Maulana Azad led the official negotiations for the Congress, and Congress put forth the following objections. Dominion status instead of a provision for complete independence, representation of the princely states by the nominees and not by elected representatives, right to provinces to secede as this went against the principle of national unity. Absence of any plan for immediate transfer of power and absence of any real share in defense. The decision on secession was to be taken by a resolution in the legislature by a 60% majority. If less than 60% of members supported it, the decision was to be taken by a plebiscite of adult males of that province by a simple majority. So these were the objections put forward by Congress. Muslim League criticized the idea of a single Indian Union and did not like the machinery for the creation of a constituent assembly and the procedure to decide on the accession of provinces to the Union. They thought that the proposals denied the Muslims the right to self-determination and the creation of Pakistan. The liberals considered the secession proposals to be against the unity and security of India. Gandhi described the scheme as a post-dated check. Quit India movement 1942. Stafford Cripps left India leaving behind a frustrated and embittered Indian people. All Indian people felt that the existing situation in the country had become intolerable and that the time had come for a final assault on imperialism. Gandhi put forth as a resolution calling for British withdrawal and a non-violent, non-cooperation movement against any Japanese invasion. On July 14, 1942, the CWC met at Wardha and accepted the idea of a struggle. Gandhi was authorized to take charge of the non-violent mass movements. This resolution has come to be known as Quit India Resolution. It was proposed by Nehru and accepted by All India Congress Committee meeting in Bombay in August. It was ratified at the Congress meeting at Gowalia Chang, Bombay on August 8, 1942. The resolution includes the following: demand for an immediate end to the British rule in India, declared the commitment of free India to defend itself against all types of fascism and imperialism, calling for forming a provisional government of India after British withdrawal, approval a civil disobedience movement against British rule. It named Gandhi as the leader of the struggle. Gandhi's special instructions. Gandhi gave instructions to different sections of the society such as Government Servants. Do not resign but declare your allegiance to the Congress. Soldiers. Do not leave the army but do not fire on compatriots. Students. If confident, leave studies. Peasants. If zamindars are anti-government, pay mutually agreed rent, and if zamindars are pro-government, do not pay rent. Princes. Support the masses and accept the sovereignty of your people. Princely states people, support the ruler only if he is anti-government and declare yourselves to be a part of the Indian nation. It was here at Gowalia Tank that the Gandhi gave the famous exhortation. He said, here is a mantra, a short one that I give you. You may imprint it on your hearts and let every breath of yours give expression to it. The mantra is, do or die. We shall either free India or die in the attempt. We shall not live to see the perpetuation of our slavery. Gandhi had built the necessary tempo through individual satyagraha, organizational revamping, and a consistent propaganda campaign. He prepared the masses for the struggle. Course of the movements. On August 9, 1942, early morning, the government arrested all the top leaders of Congress and took them to unknown destinations. The government used the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1908 to declare Congress Working Committee, the All India Congress Committee, and the Provincial Congress Committees as unlawful associations. They invoked the Defence of India rules to prohibit the assembly of public meetings. The movement became leaderless. The younger and the militant elements were now left to their own initiative. Aruna Asaf Ali, a young woman who was relatively unknown till then, presided over the Congress committee session and hoisted the flag. The general public attacked the symbols of authority and hoisted the national flags forcibly on public buildings. The bridges were blown up, railway tracks were removed, and telegraph lines were cut. Students went on strike in schools, workers went on strike in all industrial towns. These were especially intense in eastern United Provinces and Bihar. The nationalists such as Ram Manohar Lohia, Jai Prakash Narayan, Aruna Asaf Ali, Usha Mehta, Biju Patnaik, Achyut Patwardhan, Sucheta Kripalani, R.P. Goenka, etc. went underground and took to subversive activities. Usha Mehta started an underground radio in Bombay. Parallel governments were established in many places. Balia under Chittu Pandey only for a week released several Congress leaders. Tamluk, Midnapur 1942 to 44, a Jatiya Sarkar was formed and several social works were undertaken such as Vidyut Vahinis, cyclone relief, food distribution, etc. Satara 1943 to 45, a Prati Sarkar was formed under Y.B. Chavan, Nana Patil. They organized village libraries, Nyayadan Mandals, prohibition campaigns and Gandhi marriages. Extension of participation. There was mass participation on many levels. As mentioned earlier, youth, women, students, workers, peasants, government officials, everyone participated in the movement. There were no communal clashes during the movement. However, some sections didn't participate, such as communists, did not join the movement because Russia, where the communists were in power, was attacked by the Nazi Germany. The communists began to support the British war against Germany, and the imperialist war became the People's War. The Muslim League, the Hindu Mahasabha boycotted the movement, and the princely state showed a low-key response. Repression by the government. Since the movement was leaderless, the violence was common. The movement established the truth that it was no longer possible to rule India without the wishes of the Indians. Though martial law was not applied, the repression by the government was severe, the press was muzzled. The police lathi charged the agitating crowds, tear gassed them and fired upon. An estimated 10,000 people were killed. The military took over cities, the police and secret service reigned supreme. Fasting by Gandhi. The government exhorted Gandhi to condemn violence. In February 1943, Gandhi started a fast directed against the violence of the state instead. The response of the people to the news of the fast was immediate and overwhelming. Protests were organized everywhere, even abroad through hartals, demonstrations, and strikes. The fast raised public morale and heightened the anti-British feeling. An opportunity was provided for political activity. The Bengal famine of 1943. There was severe famine in the year 1943 in Bengal, with Tamluk, Konchai, Diamond Harbour region, and Dhaka, Faridpur, Tipera, and Noakhali being the worst affected areas. It was estimated that close to 30 lakh people died in the famine, which was basically man-made. The epidemics such as malaria, cholera, smallpox, and malnutrition and starvation were major causes. The famine was caused because the food was diverted to feed a vast army, and the rice imports from Burma and Southeast Asia had been stopped. The scarcity of the food was aggravated by gross mismanagement and deliberate profiteering. The British didn't help the victims of the famine and pursued their own policy. Ships with food grains coming in from Australia and Southeast were docking in Calcutta, but were instructed by then PM Winston Churchill not to disembark their cargo but to sail on to Europe. He instructed them to add to the buffer stocks in the event of a future invasion of Greece and Yugoslavia. When some of the conscience-stricken British officials wrote to the Prime Minister in London, pointing out that his policies were causing needless loss of life, as a reply, Churchill wrote in the margin of the report, "Why hasn't Gandhi died yet?" Rajagopalachari Formula 1944. Meanwhile, the efforts were on to solve the constitutional crisis. C. Rajagopalachari Rajaji came up with the constitutional proposals for the Congress League cooperation in 1944. Gandhi supported the Rajagopalachari formula. The Rajaji formula included the following points. Muslim League to endorse the Congress demand for independence. League would cooperate with Congress in forming a provisional government at center. The plebiscite to be held in Muslim majority areas in the northwest and east entire population whether or not to form a separate sovereign state. If people vote for partition in the plebiscite, then agreement to be made jointly for safeguarding the defense, commerce, and communications. Objections to the C. Rajagopalachari formula. Jinnah and Muslim League objected to it. They wanted Congress to accept the two-nation theory. Also, they wanted only the Muslims of the northwest and east to vote in the plebiscite and not the entire population. The Congress was ready to cooperate with the League for the independence of the Indian Union. However, the League was only interested in a separate nation and didn't care about the independence of the Union. Thus, there was a deadlock again. Desai Liaquat Pact. Bhula Bhai Desai, leader of the Congress party in the Central Legislative Assembly, met Liaquat Ali Khan, deputy leader of the Muslim League. They came up with a draft proposal for the formation of interim government at the center with the following points. An equal number of persons nominated by the Congress and the League in the central legislature. 20% reserved seats for minorities. No settlement could be reached again, but these plans elevated the levels of Muslim League to the parity with the Congress. This had far-reaching consequences in the subsequent years. Wavell Plan or Shimla Conference of 1945. The World War came to end in May 1945. The Conservative government in the Britain led by Churchill was keen to reach a solution to the constitutional question in India. The British government permitted the Viceroy Lord Wavell to start to negotiate with Indian leaders, and Congress leaders were released from jails in June 1945. Wavell's India was to reconstruct the Governor General's Executive Council before the preparation of a new constitution. He came up with a plan. To discuss the plan, he convened a conference at Shimla in June 1945. Proposals of a Wavell plan. All the members of the Executive Council were to be Indians except the Governor General and the Commander in Chief. Thus, all the portfolios except defense were to be under Indians. Caste Hindus and Muslims were to have equal representation. This council was to function as an interim government within the framework of the 1935 Act, and Governor General was to have a veto on the advice of ministers. Representatives of different parties were to submit a list to the Viceroy for nominations to the Executive Council. Response to the plan. Here, the Muslim League wanted all Muslim members to be League nominees. They feared that since the aims of other minorities such as the depressed classes, Sikhs, Christians, etc., were the same as those of the Congress, the arrangement would reduce the League to a one-third minority. They also claimed a veto in the council with decisions opposed to Muslims needing a two-thirds majority for approval. The Congress, however, objected to the plan. Congress saw it as an attempt to reduce the Congress to the status of a purely caste Hindu party and insisted on its right to include members of all communities among its nominees. Indian National Army. Subhash Chandra Bose. Subhash Chandra Bose, after the snub at the Tripuri Congress session and removal from the Congress post, convened an anti-compromise conference at Ramgarh in 1940. It was a joint effort of the Forward Bloc and the Kisan Sabha. At this conference, it was resolved that a worldwide struggle would be launched on April 6, 1940. The participation by the people in the struggle launched on April 6 was growing, but Bose was arrested in July. He did a hunger strike in the prison, so he was released from prison and placed under house arrest in December 1940. He escaped from the house arrest in January 1941. On January 26, 1941, he reached Peshawar under the pseudo-name Ziauddin, helped by Bhagat Ram. He then left India to supplement from outside the struggle going on at home. He was reported to have approached Russia for help in the Indian struggle for freedom from Britain, but Russia, after a Nazi attack, joined the Allies in the war. Disappointed, Bose went to Germany and met Hitler under the pseudo-name Orlando Mazzotta. Bose in Germany. Bose in Germany. Here, with the support from Hitler, the Freedom Army Mukti Sena was formed, which consisted of all the prisoners of war of Indian origin captured by Germany and Italy. Dresden in Germany became the headquarters of the Freedom Army. Bose came to be called Netaji by the people of Germany. It was here he gave the famous slogan Jai Hind from the Free India Center, Germany. He regularly broadcasted from Berlin radio, which enthused Indians. In early 1943, he left Germany in submarines to reach in Japan and then Singapore in July of the same year. From here, he took over the command of the Indian National Army from Rash Bihari Bose in the second phase of the Indian National Army. Origin of the Indian National Army. The original idea of the Indian National Army was of Mohan Singh, an army officer who had decided not to join the retreating British army in Malaya. He created an army out of the Indian prisoners of war, POWs, and took the help of Japanese in recruiting the POWs. After the fall of Singapore, several prisoners of war were ready to join Mohan Singh. 40,000 men were ready to join the Indian National Army by 1942. They had decided that the Indian National Army would go into action only on the invitation of the Indian National Congress and the people of India. The outbreak of Quit India movement in August 1942 encouraged them, and the first division of the INA was formed with 16,300 men. Japanese contemplated to invade India, so they felt an armed wing of INA was more relevant to them. Actually, the Japanese wanted a token force of 2,000 only, while Mohan Singh wanted to raise a much larger army. Serious differences emerged between the Indian army officers led by the Mohan Singhs and the Japanese over the role to be played by the INA. Mohan Singh was taken into custody by the Japanese. The second phase began with the arrival of Subhash Bose in Singapore, but he first reached Tokyo in June 1943 under pseudonym Abid Hussain and met the Japanese Prime Minister Tojo Ras Bihari Bose. Before Subhash Chandra Bose taking control of the INA, the role of Ras Bihari needs to be discussed. After the failure of revolutionary activities in 1915, he fled to Japan and became a naturalized citizen there. He founded the Indian Club of Tokyo and gave lectures on the evils of Western imperialism. He put in a lot effort into getting the Japanese interest in the Indian independence movement. He also formed Indian Independence League in 1942 in Tokyo. When Mohan Singh formed the INA in Singapore, he was excited and left Tokyo to reach Bangkok conference. Here it was decided to place the INA under an Indian Independence League. Second phase of the INA. Second phase of INA. When Subhash Chandra Bose met Japanese PM Tojo, he asked Subhash Bose to lead the INA. Bose was ready for it. He went to Singapore and met Rash Bihari Bose. The latter happily transferred the control and leadership of the Indian Independence League and the INA to Subhash in July 1943. Subhash Bose became Supreme Commander of the INA on August 25, 1943. Provisional Government at Singapore. On October 21, 1943, he formed the Provisional Government for Free India at Singapore with H.C. Chatterjee Finance Portfolio, M.A. Iyer Broadcasting, Lakshmi Swaminathan Women Department, etc. This provisional government declared war on Britain and the United States and was recognized by the Axis powers. INA trained the recruits and collected funds for INA. A women's regiment called Rani Jhansi Regiment was also formed. The Japanese gave the Andaman and Nicobar Islands to INA on November 6, 1943. They renamed the island as Shahid Dweep and Swaraj Dweep respectively. Soon the INA headquarters was shifted to Rangoon in Burma in January 1944. They were to march from there with the war cry Chalo Delhi. In a radio address in July 1944, Bose addressed Mahatma Gandhi as Father of Nation from Azad Hind Radio. He was the first person to call Gandhi Father of Nation. He asked for Gandhi's blessings for India's last war of independence. Imphal Campaign. A battalion led by Shah Nawaz accompanied the Japanese army to the Indo-Burma front and participated in the Imphal Campaign. Indians were discriminated by the Japanese here. They were denied rations and arms and were made to do menial work for the Japanese units. This disgusted and demoralized the INA units. INA crossed the Burma border and stood on Indian soil on March 18, 1944, subsequently advanced up to Kohima and Imphal. Amidst the cries of Jai Hind and Netaji Zindabad, INA led by the Colonel Malik of Bahadur Group hoisted the INA flag for the first time on the Indian mainland at Moirang in Manipur. It is here the INA Memorial Complex stands today. INA carried out military administration duties at Moirang for 3 months, but soon after, the Allied forces reclaimed the territory. Japanese surrender. The INA and the Japanese began their withdrawal on July 18, 1944. The Japanese retreat quashed any hopes of the INA liberating the nation, and they surrendered on August 15, 1945 in the Second World War, and with this the INA also surrendered. Subhash Bose is said to have died mysteriously in an air crash at Taipei, Taiwan on August 18, 1945. However, many people don't believe this to date. The INA soldiers were brought back to India as POWs after the war. A powerful movement emerged in their defense. Post-war scenario in India. The government lifted the ban on Congress and released the Congress leaders in June 1945. The Wavell Plan failed to break the constitutional deadlock. Labour Party formed the government in Britain in July 1945 and Clement Attlee became the new PM and Patrick Lawrence became the new Secretary of State for India. Elections were announced to central and provincial assemblies in August 1945 and were held in the winter of 1945 to 46. The election campaign saw fiery speeches by the leaders, and the nationalist sentiments were roused against the state repression. There was also mass pressure against the trial of INA POWs. It was like sitting on an edge of a volcano for the British. They added fuel to the mistake by holding the first trial at the Red Fort in Delhi in November 1945. Moreover, they put on the dock together with a Hindu Prem Kumar Sehgal, a Muslim Shah Nawaz Khan, and a Sikh Gurbaksh Singh Dhillon. The use of Indian army units to restore French and Dutch colonial rule in Vietnam and Indonesia added to the anti-imperialist feeling among a section of the urban population and the army. An INA Relief and Inquiry Committee collected funds and distributed money and food and helped arrange employment for the affected. There was a huge campaign for the release of INA prisoners. The agitation got wide publicity in the press. Pamphlets were distributed. There were celebrations of INA Day November 12, 1945 and INA Week November 5 to 11. An All India Women's Conference was also organized demanding the release of the INA prisoners. The nationalist sentiment reached a peak over the support of INA trials. It developed into violent confrontations with the authority towards the end of 1945. Three upsurges. There were three upsurges such as on November 21, 1945 in Calcutta over the INA trials. On February 11, 1946 in Calcutta against the 7-year sentence to INA officer Rashid Ali. On February 18, 1946 in Bombay the strike by the Royal Indian Navy ratings. First upsurge. In the first upsurge on November 21, 1945, a student procession was carried out. It was joined by some forward bloc sympathizers, Student Federation of India SFI activists, and also by members of the League and Congress. This was a symbol of anti-imperialist unity. They marched together to Dalhousie Square, the seat of government in Calcutta. The police lathi charged the protesters and they retaliated by throwing stones and brickbats. The police resorted to firing. 2 people died. Second upsurge. On February 11, 1946, the protest was led by Muslim League students, in which some Congress and Communist students organizations joined. Section 144 was imposed, and arrests were made by the police. This provoked the students to defy Section 144. There were many arrests, and the agitating students were lathi charged. The British Indian government continued to repress the protesting people. All three upsurges followed a similar pattern. Rebellion by naval ratings, third upsurge. On February 18, 1946, around 1100 Royal Indian Navy ratings of the HMIS Talwar went on a strike to protest against the racial discrimination, abuse by superior officers, and arrest of a rating for scrawling "Quit India" on HMIS Talwar. They demanded equal pay for Indian and white soldiers. They hoisted the tricolour, crescent, and the hammer and sickle flags on the mast of the fleet. They were soon joined by the other ratings and they went around Bombay in lorries holding Congress flags, threatening Europeans and policemen. There were strikes in support of these in other military establishments as well such as in Karachi, Madras, Visakhapatnam, Calcutta, Delhi, Cochin, Jamnagar, Andamans, Bahrain and Aden. There were strikes by the Royal Indian Air Force as well in Bombay, Pune, Calcutta, Jessore and Ambala. However, the nationalist leaders Sardar Patel and Jinnah persuaded the ratings to surrender on February 23 with an assurance that national parties would prevent any victimization. It has to be said that the naval mutiny acted as the final in the coffin of the British Raj towards the freedom and partition. Result of election 1946. In the elections, Congress got 95% of non-Muslim votes. It won in 57 out of 102 seats in Central Assembly. Even in the provincial elections, Congress got a majority in most provinces except in Bengal, Sindh and Punjab. The Congress won the majority in the provinces of Northwestern Frontier Province and Assam, which were being claimed for Pakistan. Muslim League secured 86.6% of the Muslim votes and won 30 reserved seats in Central Assembly. In the provincial elections, it got a majority in Bengal and Sindh. In these elections, the Muslim League established itself as the dominant party among Muslims, unlike the debacle in 1937. In Punjab, a unionist Congress Akali coalition under the Khizr Hayat Khan assumed power. The elections saw communal voting in contrast to the strong anti-British unity. It was due to separate electorates and limited franchise. For the provinces, less than 10% of the population could vote, and for the Central Assembly, less than 1% of the population was eligible. Cabinet Mission 1946. The British government under the PM Clement Attlee announced a high-powered cabinet mission in February 1946. It included three British cabinet members to find out ways and means for a negotiated peaceful transfer of power to India, such as Pethick Lawrence, Secretary of State for India, Stafford Cripps, President of the Board of Trade, and A.V. Alexander, First Lord of Admiralty to India. Pethick Lawrence headed the cabinet mission. The aim of the British lawmakers was a graceful withdrawal by finalizing a settlement on the modalities of the transfer of power and nature of post-imperial India-Britain relations. Congress demanded the cabinet mission to transfer the power to one center. To accommodate minorities' demands, it demanded them to provide autonomy to Muslim-majority provinces for self-determination or secession from the Indian Union, but only after the British left. The British as well bid for a united India, an active partner in defense of the Commonwealth. A divided India would lack in defense and would have been a blot on Britain's diplomacy. Clement Attlee said in his speech, though mindful of the rights of minorities, cannot allow a minority to place their veto on the advance of the majority. The cabinet mission arrived in India at Delhi on March 24, 1946. It discussed with representatives all parties and groups on the issues of interim government and principles and procedures for framing a new constitution giving freedom to India. However, Congress and the League could not come to a consensus on the issue of the unity or partition of India. The mission put forward its own plan for the solution of the constitutional problem in May 1946. Proposals of the cabinet mission. It rejected the demand for a full-fledged Pakistan because of the following reasons. Pakistan so formed would include a large non-Muslim population as 38% in the northwest and 48% in the east. The League's very own principle of communal self-determination would mean the separation of Hindu-majority Western Bengal and Sikh and Hindu-dominated Ambala and Jalandhar divisions of Punjab. Partition would cause economic and administrative problems because of the distance between the western and the eastern parts of Pakistan, and the division of the armed forces would be dangerous. It recommended the grouping of the provincial assemblies into three sections. Section A, Madras, Bombay, Central Provinces, United Provinces, Bihar and Odisha, Hindu majority provinces. Section B, Punjab, Northwest Frontier Province and Sindh, Muslim majority provinces. Section C, Bengal and Assam, Muslim majority provinces. A three-tier executive and legislature at provincial, section and union levels. A constituent assembly of 389 members was to be elected by the provincial assemblies by proportional representation, of which 93 were to be from princely states. The constituent assembly members from group A, B and C were to sit separately to decide the constitution of 4 provinces, and then they would sit together to formulate the union constitution. A central government would control defense, communication and external affairs. A federal structure was envisaged for India. The questions on communal affairs in the central legislature were to be decided by simple majority of both communities present and voting. The provinces were to have full autonomy and residual powers. The princely states were given an option to enter into an arrangement with successor governments or the British government. An interim government was to be formed from the Constituent Assembly until the constitution was finalized. Post-cabinet mission. The Muslim League on June 6 and the Congress on June 24, 1946 accepted the long-term plan put forward by the cabinet mission. Early July 1946, elections were held in provincial assemblies for the Constituent Assembly. On July 10, 1946, Nehru gave a statement on the cabinet mission which stated, "We are not bound by a single thing except that we have decided to go into the Constituent Assembly," implying that the Constituent Assembly was sovereign and would decide the rules of procedure. The big probability is that there would be no grouping as an Northwest Frontier province and Assam would have objections to joining sections B and C. Call for direct action. As a reaction to Nehru's statement on July 29, 1946, the League withdrew its acceptance of the long-term plan and gave a call for direct action for August 16 to achieve Pakistan. The Indian scene changed rapidly post the direct action call from August 16, 1946. Communal riots began on an unprecedented scale, leaving several thousand dead and lakhs homeless. Calcutta, Bombay, Noakhali, Bihar, and Garmukteshwar in Indian provinces were worst hit. Interim government. The then Viceroy Lord Wavell, fearing a mass action by the Congress, swore in a Congress-dominated interim government headed by Nehru on September 2, 1946. Despite the title, the interim government was little more than a continuation of the old executive of the Viceroy. Wavell overruled the cabinet on the matter of release of INA prisoners in his very last cabinet meeting in March 1947. He brought in Muslim League into the interim government on October 26, 1946. The League was allowed to join despite its rejection of the cabinet mission's long-term and short-term plans and without giving up the direct action. There were 114 ministers in the interim government between September 2, 1946 to August 15, 1947. They were the following: Jawaharlal Nehru, Vice President of the Executive Council, External Affairs and Commonwealth Relations; Vallabhbhai Patel, Home, Information and Broadcasting; Baldev Singh, Defence; Dr. John Mathai, Industries and Supplies; C. Rajagopalachari, Education; C. H. Bhabha, Works, Mines and Power; Rajendra Prasad, Agriculture and Food; Jagjeevan Ram, Labour; Asif Ali, Railway; Liaquat Ali Khan of Muslim League, Finance; Ibrahim Ismail Chundrigar, Muslim League, Commerce; Abdul Rab Nishtar of Muslim League, Communications; Ghazanfar Ali Khan, Muslim League, Health; Jogendra Nath Mandal, Muslim League, Law. Obstructionist approach by the League. The League boycotted the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly on December 9, 1946. Therefore, the Assembly had to confine itself to passing a general objectives resolution drafted by Jawaharlal Nehru stating the ideals of an independent sovereign republic. The League refused to attend informal meetings of the cabinet to make decisions. The League questioned the decisions and appointments made by the Congress members. Liaquat Ali Khan, as the finance minister, restricted the efficient functioning of other ministries by blocking the release of funds. The League joined the interim government only to gain a foothold in the government and fight for Pakistan. They saw it as a continuation of the civil war by other means. Congress demanded the British get the League to change its attitude or quit. In February 1947, Congress wrote to the Viceroy demanding the resignation of the League members and threatening the withdrawal of their own nominees. The last straw came with the League demanding the dissolution of the Constituent Assembly. The crisis came to the boiling point. Attlee's statement. British PM Clement Attlee, sensing the crisis, made an announcement on the February 20, 1947, and the British House of Commons declared the British intention of leaving the Indian subcontinent. June 30, 1948 was fixed as a deadline for the transfer of power, even if the Indian politicians had not agreed by that time on the constitution. The British would transfer the power to some form of central government or even to the provinces if the Constituent Assembly was not fully representative, that is, if the Muslim majority provinces did not join. Lord Mountbatten would replace Wavell as the Viceroy. Reaction to the Attlee statement. The provision of the transfer of power to more than one centre was acceptable to the Congress because it meant that the existing assembly could go ahead and frame a constitution for the areas represented by it. The Muslim League helped, emboldened by the statement, and launched a civil disobedience movement to overthrow the coalition government in Punjab. There were Communal riots everywhere and the unworkability of the Congress League coalition compelled many to think in terms of accepting the so far unthinkable idea of partition in early 1947. Independence and partition. Nehru made a statement on March 10, 1947 that the cabinet mission plan was workable if carried out. The only real alternative he saw was the partition of Punjab and Bengal. The Congress President J.B. Kripalani in April 1947 communicated to the Viceroy, rather than have a battle, we shall let them have their Pakistan provided you allow Bengal and Punjab to be partitioned in a fair manner. Mountbatten was quicker in taking decisions than his predecessors, as he was informally given more powers and mandate to decide things on the spot. Mountbatten was given the task to explore the options of unity and partition till October 1947, and then advise the British government on the form of transfer of power. He soon realized Jinnah was adamant about not settling for anything less than a sovereign state of Pakistan. Mountbatten agreed for the immediate transfer of power on the basis of the grant of dominion status with a right of secession, thus obviating the need to wait for an agreement in the Constituent Assembly on a new political structure. Mountbatten Plan or June Plan 1947. Mountbatten proposed a plan on June 3, 1947. He was guided by V.P. Menon. Punjab and Bengal legislative assemblies would meet in two groups, Hindus and Muslims, to vote for partition. If a simple majority of either group voted for partition, then these provinces would be partitioned. A referendum in Northeast Frontier Province and Sylhet district of Assam were to be held. In the case of partition, two dominions and two constituent assemblies would be created. The princely states were given freedom to join either India or Pakistan or even remain independent, hence came to be called the Balkan Plan. August 15, 1947 was date fixed for handing over power to India and Pakistan. Indian Independence Act 1947. The British Parliament passed the Indian Independence Act on July 5th based on the Mountbatten Plan. The Act received the royal assent on July 18, 1947 and implemented on August 15, 1947. Thus, it provided for the creation of two independent dominions of India and Pakistan with the effect from August 15, each with a Governor General to be responsible for the effective operation of the Act. The respective constituent assemblies were to exercise the powers of the legislature of that dominion. The existing Central Legislative Assembly and the Council of States were automatically dissolved. Till a new constitution was adopted, the governments were to function in accordance with the Government of India Act 1935. As per the plan, Pakistan became independent on August 14 and India on August 15, 1947. Jinnah became the first Governor General of Pakistan. India, however, decided to request Lord Mountbatten to continue as the Governor General of India. Repercussions of early withdrawal. The events took place at a breakneck speed which created anomalies in the partition. There were riots, murders, rapes, loots along the border. They couldn't be prevented because of the following reasons. No transitional and institutional structures. Mountbatten hoped to be the common Governor General of India and Pakistan. The Boundary Commission Award under the Radcliffe delayed the announcements. Mountbatten decided to make it public after August 15. Gandhi's helplessness. Gandhi felt helpless due to the communalization of the people. He was left with no option but to accept the partition because the people wanted it. How could there be a movement to fight communalism involving a communalized people? He asked. When an entire nation celebrated the independence on August 15, Gandhi marked a day with a 24-hour fast, prayer and spinning yarn in Kolkata and making preparations to leave for Noakhali in Bengal, which was worst affected due to the communal riots. He consequently played a big role in bringing peace in the region. Thank you. So this was all about the different movements which were taking place from the Quit India movement to the Indian Independence Act 1947. Do subscribe. Thank you.